I'm Dr. Deborah Ogbeni. I'm an assay manager at the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, not commonly known as CEPI. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'll be going over the comprehensive process that takes vaccines from the initial discovery to post-market surveillance. And let me just get control of my mouth. Right. Okay, so I'll begin by discussing the crucial roles vaccines play in safeguarding global health. We'll also cover the phases of development, highlighting a case study of mRNA COVID vaccine. And then I will discuss the compliance processes that are adhered to throughout the process and some lessons learned throughout the COVID pandemic. Right, so what is a vaccine? Sorry, I keep looking this way. My screen is on the left. Um, a, a vaccine, according to the World Health Organization or WHO, is any preparation intended to produce immunity to a disease by stimulating the production of antibodies. So typically, vaccines are made from either killed or weakened microorganisms or pathogens or from the derivatives. So essentially, vaccines play a crucial role in preventing diseases and reducing the spread of infectious diseases across communities worldwide. And they're also instrumental in controlling and also eradicating diseases and safeguarding global health, as I'm sure you already know. So, so a brief history of vaccines on public and the milestones in public health. So vaccines have a long and impactful history. So this began with the first vaccine, which was developed by Edward Jenner in 1796. This was a groundbreaking development which laid the foundation for modern immunology. So this led to the eradication of smallpox. And then throughout the 20th century, we saw several milestones in vaccine development. And in the 1950s, Jonas Salk developed the polio vaccine, which has now nearly eradicated this particular disease globally. The 1960s brought us the measles vaccine. This was developed by John Enders, which significantly also reduced measles cases worldwide. And now more recently in the 2000s, vaccines for human papillomavirus, short HPV, and the rotavirus, which has a substantial impact on public health, preventing cervical cancer and diarrheal cases in children, respectively, were developed. The rapid development and deployment of COVID vaccine further highlights the crucial role vaccines play in combating pandemics, as we all know. And then thanks to widespread vaccination efforts like the one during the polio epidemic and the smallpox, we now have eradicated these diseases and we've nearly eliminated some other virulent diseases as well. So these cases just highlight the importance of vaccines in protecting global health, right? So how do vaccines work? So vaccines work by mimicking disease-causing agents like viruses or bacteria to activate the immune system without causing illnesses. So they trigger B cells to produce antibodies and T cells to coordinate and enhance the immune response. So these antibodies, T cells, and memory B cells, they then persist in the body, so they remain in the body and they recognize and combat that actual pathogen if ever we encounter them again and establish a long-term immune protection in that individual, right? So what are the types of vaccines? I've just listed a few, but I think there are two more that I haven't added to this list, but these are the main ones. So vaccines employ various strategies to help boost the immune system. So for the inactivated vaccines, these are typically killed versions of the pathogens that are used. And the live attenuated vaccines, these vaccines contain weakened forms of the live pathogens. The subunit vaccines utilize specific parts of the subunits of the microorganisms are used. These could be proteins or sugars, right? So the mRNA vaccines, these are newer types of vaccines that use a small piece of genetic material known as the mRNA from the virus to instruct the cells in the body to produce a protein that then triggers the immune response. So each type of vaccines are distinct, so they have their own advantages, and scientists typically just decide which type to proceed with based on the disease and the population that they're intending to target. But I would say that all of them ensure effective protection against effective pathogens or threats, right? So I've just put this here to illustrate the phases of vaccine development. So vaccine development is a multi-phase process. And this process traditionally takes 15 years or longer. It's broken down into different, as you can see here, different phases. So it begins with the discovery phase, where we identify and we validate a potential target. And then after doing that, we move on to a preclinical phase, which involves lab testing, animal testing to assess safety and immunogenicity, right? And that takes 2 to 4 years typically. Once that's completed, we then have an investigational new drug application submitted for clinical trial, and the phase one trials begin in small scale study, which are small scale studies in limited numbers of healthy volunteers, and they help to evaluate safety, the dosage, and the immune responses. Once that's completed, we move on to the phase two clinical trials. And these are expanded studies. So they're a little bit bigger than the phase one trial. So they involve like hundreds of volunteers. And they focus on further assessing safety and immunogenicity. From the phase two, we move on to the phase three trials. So this involves a larger scale cohorts. So this involves thousands of participants, and it's just basically to confirm the efficacy and to monitor any adverse effects and compare the vaccines to standard treatments or placebos, which are like dummy injections, right? So before a vaccine can be licensed and distributed, regulatory agencies such as FDA in the US and the EMA in Europe and, well, WHO as well, they review extensive data from these clinical trials to ensure the vaccine safety, efficacy, and manufacturing consistency, right? So once those regulatory approvals are obtained, then the vaccines can be produced in large scales for distribution. So this is the top part of this diagram just illustrates the traditional pathway that the vaccine development process goes through. But I've also highlighted a case study of the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine development, which was which recently occurred during the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. So this is one of the most recent successes in vaccine development. We utilized the mRNA technology for this. And this was done from companies such as Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna. So these vaccines were developed rapidly due to their innovative use of that mRNA vaccine technology. And as I mentioned earlier, this uses genetic instructions to prompt the immune system to fight the virus, right? So this case just highlights the potential of modern vaccine technology to swiftly address global health. So typically, the process that would normally take 15 years or longer took 10 months to 1.5 years to complete. So this was really impressive for us to see and achieve. But I would also like to highlight that despite the speed to which this vaccine was brought to licensure and distribution, there were no shortcuts, there were no what's the word, gaps in the ensuring compliance. So this rapid timeline was made possible by global collaboration and funding prioritization, which kind of streamlined the clinical trial and regulatory processes. And these efforts just enabled the thorough yet expedited evaluation of safety and efficacy. So all those regulatory processes were still followed, but there was just speed due to collaboration and global efforts from everyone, right? So that said, so now I'll just explain a bit more about the compliance involved in the vaccine development process. So compliance with regulatory standard is, again, very crucial during the vaccine development process. Key regulatory bodies such as the FDA, EMA, and World Health Organization, they monitor clinical trial data. And these organizations ensure adherence to good laboratory practices, good clinical practices, and good manufacturing practices. So meeting these standards are very essential for safety and efficacy of vaccines. And we make sure that the vaccine developers adhere to these standards during the development processes. And if the vaccine manufacturers can prove that they met these standards, then we can move them to licensure. So next to the quality and assurance. So quality control involves rigorous testing of raw materials, intermediates, and final products to ensure consistency and safety. So, and then quality assurance, on the other hand, encompasses systematic activities, including documentation, auditing, to maintain high standards throughout the development process. Both the QC and the QA processes are vital in successful vaccine development because they ensure that every batch of the vaccine meets the required standard before it reaches the public. Ethical consideration, it forms a very important cornerstone in vaccine development. So it ensures the protection of the participants that are involved in the clinical trials. So we need to get an informed consent before any individual is enrolled into a clinical trial. So informed consent stands as a pivotal safeguard for those volunteers that are enrolled into a clinical trial. So ensuring that the participants fully comprehend the trial objectives, the procedures, the potential risk before consenting to participate is very important. And that needs to be obtained before any trial commences. So regulatory agencies such as the ethical review board serve as a vital oversight that oversee this process. So they meticulously review and approve clinical trial processes, and they ensure that informed consents from each individual have been obtained during the trial process. So the ethical review board ensure, again, stringent ethical guidelines are followed, right? Safeguarding the rights and safety of those individuals. I can't stress this enough. And so for the risk management process in vaccine development, this step is also essential in addressing potential adverse effects. So during the manufacturing process, they identify risk early and they implement mitigation strategies such as preclinical testing or vigilant monitoring clinical trials. And this ensures the safety and success of every vaccine development process. So this proactive approach just minimizes any risk and ensures that any issues are addressed properly and effectively before it gets to the final stage where the public uses the vaccine. So post-market surveillance. So even after a vaccine is approved, monitoring its safety is still very important and is still much of a priority for vaccine developers. So pharmacovigilance involves ongoing surveillance to detect or assess and respond to any adverse events. So we have things in place such as the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which is a tool that plays a crucial role in post-market surveillance monitoring. This enables us to collect and analyze data on vaccine-related adverse events. And this database is continuously monitored, and it also just ensures long-term side effects are monitored and identified and managed appropriately, right? So in summary, I would like to say that recent vaccine development efforts have highlighted critical and important rigorous testing and strict compliance measures that need to be in place. We've also learned that the right strategies and rapid yet safe vaccine is achievable using the right technology. And we've also gained some best practices from the recent COVID-19 pandemic. So vaccine developers have learned to collaborate, and they know that in collaborating, we can achieve safe and rapid licensure of new technologies. And in maintaining transparent communication, just to ensure that the public are fully informed of what's going on, to build trust and to ensure successful vaccination programs, clinical trials can be expedited. And these practices are essential for just boosting the public's trust in what we do as vaccine development organizations. So these lessons learned from recent experiences will serve as a guide to enhance vaccine development and deployment, and also ensure that improved preparedness for future pandemics or emerging infectious diseases are in place, should in case anything happen. So these are the references I've used, and thank you for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your talk, Deborah. Do you have any questions at all for Deborah?
Hi, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Hello.
I was just wondering, because vaccines have become quite controversial, do you do much work with the public to like improve confidence in them?
So yes, so I work for the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness. So part of what we do is funding vaccine developers to develop those crucial vaccines that we need. So organizations such as FINE and Gavi, they are in place to raise awareness for different things that go on behind the scenes. So they have regular seminars, and they have local trainers in different remote regions, just explaining how safe vaccines are and how essential they are. Because one of the drawbacks we have in eradicating some diseases is the fear that most people have regarding vaccines. So we try as much as possible to educate them and just to explain all the measures that are in place to ensure the safety of anyone receiving any vaccine. So yes, we have programs in place to raise awareness and to educate people in different regions.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We might have time for one more quick one if there's any.
There's one in the chat.
There's one in the chat. Thank you. Let's have a look. From Alison. So what do you think the future is for vaccine development?
That's a good question, very good question. So one of the projects I'm currently working on is well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but we're trying we're trying out new delivery techniques. So at the moment we have the injection route. So I know advances in technology can also lead to administration of vaccines through different routes. So for in like cough syrups, we have the ones we take orally and some that can be injected, right? So I think vaccine is also leaning towards that direction where they have different application methods. So you can have maybe the patch one, the one you inject, or the ones they swallow. So advances in technology is something we're definitely working on. And yeah, that's all because we want to eradicate most diseases and just administer the vaccines in the most safe and effective way possible.